I always thought I knew everything about my husband. After 50 years of marriage, you'd think there wouldn't be a single secret left between us. We'd built a life together, raised children, buried parents, survived storms and sickness and the slow, quiet ache of growing old. I thought we'd shared every story, every scar, every hope. But I was wrong. My name is Dorothy. I'm 76 years old, and this is the story of the day I learned that even the people you love most can still surprise you. Sometimes, the truth is hidden in the places you least expect, like the pages of a well-worn Bible, tucked away on a dusty shelf. It was a Tuesday morning in late autumn, the kind of day when the world feels suspended between seasons. The leaves outside my window were gold and red, swirling in the wind, and the house was quiet except for the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. I was cleaning out the bedroom closet, sorting through boxes of winter clothes and old photo albums, when I found his Bible. It was the same black leather Bible he'd carried since we were newlyweds. The cover was cracked, the pages soft and thin from years of turning. I ran my fingers over his name, embossed in faded gold. James E. Miller. I smiled, remembering how he used to read from it every night before bed, his voice low and steady, the words a comfort in the darkness. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the Bible, letting the pages fall where they wanted. A small piece of paper fluttered out and landed in my lap. At first, I thought it was just an old church bulletin or a bookmark. But when I picked it up, I saw my name written on the front in James's careful handwriting. Dorothy, if you ever find this, it means I'm gone. Please read it. My heart skipped a beat. I looked around the empty room, half expecting to see him standing in the doorway, grinning at me the way he used to when he played the little tricks. But the house was silent. I unfolded the note, my hands trembling. My dearest Dorothy, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I never wanted to leave you with questions, but there are things I couldn't say out loud, things I was afraid would hurt you or change the way you saw me. But you deserve the truth. You always have. All my love, James. I stared at the words, my mind racing. What truth? What could he possibly have hidden from me after all these years? I read the note again, searching for clues, for answers, for anything that would make sense. I thought back over our life together, the early years in the tiny apartment above the bakery, the nights we stayed up late talking about our dreams, the way he held me when our first child was born. I remembered the hard times too, the arguments, the money troubles, the days when it felt like the world was too heavy to carry. But through it all, I had always believed in us, in him. I sat there for a long time, the note clutched in my hands, the Bible open on my lap. I thought about all the times I'd seen James reading late into the night, his brow furrowed, his lips moving silently. I wondered what secrets he had carried, what burdens he had borne alone. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I moved through the house like a ghost, dusting shelves, folding laundry, making tea I didn't drink. I kept the note in my pocket, touching it every few minutes as if it might disappear if I let it go. That evening, I called my daughter, Susan. She lives 2 states away, busy with her own family, but she always tries to check in. Mom, you sound tired, she said. Is everything okay? I hesitated, unsure how to explain the ache in my chest, the fear that had settled in my bones. I found something in your father's Bible, I said finally. A note. He said there was something he never told me. Susan was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come visit? I almost said yes. I almost begged her to drop everything and come home, to sit with me in the kitchen and help me make sense of it all. But I knew she couldn't, and I knew, deep down, that this was something I had to face on my own. I'll be all right, I said. I just needed to hear your voice. After we hung up, I sat in the living room, the note in my lap, the Bible beside me. I stared at the fireplace, remembering all the winters we'd spent curled up together, the way James used to poke the logs and tell stories about his childhood. I wondered what stories he had never told. That night, I lay awake in bed, the note tucked under my pillow. I thought about all the things I didn't know, about James, about myself, about the life we had built together. I wondered if I was ready to learn the truth, or if some secrets were better left buried. But as the wind howled outside and the house creaked around me, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. I had to read the rest of the note. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized that sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones you tell your children. They're the ones you keep to yourself, the ones that change everything when you finally let them out. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the house still wrapped in darkness. I lay in bed, the note heavy beneath my pillow, my mind racing with questions. What could James have hidden from me? What truth was so terrible, so important, that he could only confess it after he was gone? I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, the Bible and the note in front of me. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper again, searching for more. I turned the note over, and there, on the back, in James's careful script, was a second message. Dorothy, if you're ready, look in the back cover of this Bible. There's something there I never had the courage to show you. I hope you can forgive me. All my love. James. My breath caught. I turned the Bible over, running my fingers along the inside of the back cover. There, taped to the leather, was a small, yellowed envelope. My name was written on it. The ink faded but unmistakable. With trembling hands, I peeled the envelope free and opened it. Inside was a letter, longer than the first, and a photograph, one I had never seen before. The letter began, "My dearest Dorothy, I have loved you since the first moment I saw you. You were the light in my life, the reason I worked so hard, the reason I believed in second chances. But there is something I never told you, something I was too ashamed to admit. Before I met you, I made mistakes. I was young, foolish, and scared. I fell in love with someone else, a woman named Evelyn. We were both lost, both running from our pasts. We had a child together, a son. But I was too afraid to be a father, too afraid to face my own failures. I left them behind, thinking I could start over, thinking I could build a new life with you. I never stopped loving you, Dorothy. But I never stopped thinking about the son I left behind either. I tried to find him, tried to make amends, but I was always too late, too scared, too ashamed. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I hope you can forgive me for the secrets I kept, for the pain I caused. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me and maybe, if you're willing, to find my son. His name is Samuel. He would be in his 50s now. I've left information in the safe deposit box at the bank. All my love, James." I stared at the letter, my mind spinning. A son? James had a son before me? I looked at the photograph. A young woman with kind eyes, holding a baby boy. On the back, in James's handwriting, was written, "Evelyn and Samuel, 1967. I sat there for a long time, the letter and photo spread out on the table, the Bible open beside them. I thought about all the years I had spent with James, all the stories we had shared, all the secrets we had kept. I wondered how many times he had wanted to tell me, how many nights he had lain awake, haunted by the past. I thought about the life we had built together, the children, the grandchildren, the home filled with laughter and love. I wondered what it would have been like if I had known about Samuel, if James had found the courage to tell me the truth. The day passed in a blur. I moved through the house like a ghost, the letter and photo never far from my thoughts. I called Susan, my daughter, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I had found. Not yet. I needed time to process, to grieve, to forgive. That night, I sat by the fireplace, the letter in my lap, the photograph propped against the Bible. I thought about Evelyn, about Samuel, about the life they must have lived without James. I wondered if Samuel knew about his father, if he had ever tried to find him, if he would want to know me. I wrote in my journal, "Today, I learned that love is not always enough to erase the past. That even the people we trust most can carry secrets too heavy to share. That forgiveness is not a gift we give to others, but a gift we give to ourselves." As I closed the journal, I realized that the journey was just beginning. I had a choice to make, bury the secret with James, or honor his last wish and try to find the son he left behind. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The secret James had left behind was heavy, but it was also a thread I could follow, a way to honor the man I loved and the life we'd built together. I made myself a cup of tea, sat at the kitchen table, and spread out the letter, the photograph, and the Bible. I traced my finger over the name Samuel, whispering it aloud, letting it settle into my heart. I called the bank as soon as it opened. The woman on the phone, as polite but cautious. Yes, Mrs. Miller, we do have a safe deposit box in your husband's name. You're listed as a co-owner. You can come in any time. I dressed carefully, choosing a blue sweater James had always liked. As I walked to the bank, the world felt different, sharper, more alive. The air was crisp, the sky a clear winter blue. I felt the weight of the secret in my purse, the letter and photograph tucked safely inside. At the bank, the manager led me to the vault, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She handed me a small key, and I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a stack of papers, a faded envelope, and a small velvet pouch. I took out the envelope first. Inside was a birth certificate, Samuel James Carter, born June 12, 1967. Mother, Evelyn Carter. Father, James Edward Miller. My husband's name, in black and white, on a document I had never seen. There was also a letter, addressed to Samuel. Dear Samuel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I was young, scared, and I made mistakes I can never undo, but I want you to know that I loved you, even from afar. I hope you can forgive me. Your father, James. Tears blurred my vision as I read the words. I thought about the boy Samuel must have been, the man he had become, the life he had lived without his father. I wondered if he had ever wondered about James, if he had ever searched for him, if he would want to know me. I took the papers home and sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the secret pressing down on me. I thought about what to do next. Should I try to find Samuel? Should I tell Susan and the rest of the family? Should I let the past stay buried, or should I honor James's last wish? I decided to start with the basics. I searched online for Samuel James Carter, born in 1967. There were dozens of results, men with the same name scattered across Tamshasan, he country. I narrowed it down, looking for connections to Evelyn Carter, to the city where James had lived before we met. After hours of searching, I found a possible match, a man living 2 states away, listed as a teacher at a local high school. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Was this him? Was this the son James had left behind? I wrote a letter, careful and honest. Dear Samuel, my name is Dorothy Miller. I was married to James Miller for 50 years. I recently found a letter from him, written to you. If you are the Samuel Carter born in 1967 to Evelyn Carter and James Miller, please know that I am reaching out with respect and hope. I would like to talk, if you are willing. Sincerely, Dorothy Miller. I mailed the letter, my hands shaking as I dropped it in the box. For days I waited, checking the mail every morning, my heart leaping every time I saw an envelope with unfamiliar handwriting. During those days I kept busy. I met with Ruth, tended the garden, baked bread for the support group. I told no one about the letter, not even Susan. This was my journey, my secret to carry until I knew what to do. A week later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was neat, careful. Dear Dorothy, thank you for reaching out. Yes, I am Samuel Carter, son of Evelyn and James. I never knew my father, but I always wondered about him. I would like to talk. Sincerely, Samuel. My hands trembled as I read the words. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter spread out before me, the Bible and photograph beside it. I thought about James, about the secret he had carried, about the son he had left behind. I called Ruth, my voice shaking. I found him, Ruth. I found James's son. She listened, her voice full of wonder. What will you do now? I smiled, tears streaming down my face. I'm going to meet him. I'm going to tell him the truth. That night, I wrote in my journal. Today, I took the first step toward healing a wound I never knew existed. Today, I honored my husband's last wish. Today, I remembered that love is not about perfection, it's about forgiveness, about courage, about the willingness to face the truth, no matter how hard it is. As I closed the journal, I realized that the journey was just beginning. There would be more questions, more pain, more hope, but I was ready, and for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to tomorrow. The day I was to meet Samuel, I woke before dawn, nerves fluttering in my stomach. I dressed with care, choosing a soft blue sweater and the pearl earrings James had given me on our 40th anniversary. I tucked the photograph and James's letter into my purse, along with a small notebook where I'd written down everything I wanted to say. Ruth insisted on driving me. You shouldn't go alone, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I was grateful for her company, for the way she filled the silence with stories and reassurances as we drove the 2 hours to the small town where Samuel lived. We arrived at a quiet cafe on Main Street, the kind with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. I spotted Samuel right away, tall, with James's eyes and a nervous smile. He stood as I approached, his hands trembling slightly. "Dorothy?" he asked. I nodded, my own voice catching. "Samuel." We sat across from each other, the table between us suddenly feeling both like a barrier and a bridge. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I studied his face, searching for traces of the boy James had left behind, the man he had become. Finally, I reached into my purse and handed him the photograph. "This is your mother, Evelyn, and you, as a baby. James kept this all these years." Samuel's eyes filled with tears as he traced the image with his finger. "I never knew he kept anything. My mother, she never talked about him. She said he left before I was born. I always wondered why." I handed him James's letter. He read it slowly, his lips moving silently. When he finished, he looked up, his eyes shining. "Thank you for finding me, for telling me the truth." I smiled, tears slipping down my cheeks. "I wish I could have done it sooner. James wanted to find you, but he was afraid. He thought you'd hate him." Samuel shook his head. "I don't hate him, I just wish I'd known. I wish I'd had a chance to meet him, to ask him why." We talked for hours, about James, about Evelyn, about the lives we had lived on opposite sides of a secret. Samuel told me about his childhood, about the questions that had haunted him, about the longing for a father he never knew. I told him about James, about the man I loved, about the family we built, about the pain of discovering the truth too late. Ruth joined us, her presence a comfort. She listened, offered gentle words, and reminded us both that healing takes time. As the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, Samuel reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you, Dorothy, for giving me a piece of my past, for helping me understand who I am." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. "Your family, Samuel, you always were, even if you didn't know it." We parted with promises to stay in touch, to build a relationship from the pieces James had left behind. As Ruth and I drove home, I felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. I had lost James, but I had found Samuel. I had lost the illusion of a perfect marriage, but I had gained the truth. That night, I sat by the window, the photograph and letter beside me, and wrote in my journal, "Today, I met the son my husband left behind. Today, I learned that forgiveness is not about erasing the past, but about embracing it. Today, I remembered that love is not about secrets, it's about truth, about courage, about the willingness to open your heart even when it hurts." As I closed the journal, I realized that the journey was far from over. There would be more questions, more pain, more hope. But I was ready, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The days after meeting Samuel felt like stepping into a new world. I found myself thinking about him constantly, his gentle voice, the way he smiled when he talked about his students, the sadness in his eyes when he spoke of his mother. We exchanged letters and phone calls, slowly building a bridge across the years of silence and secrets. Susan called more often, sensing a change in me. "You sound lighter, Mom," she said one evening. "Is everything okay?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain the truth I had uncovered, the son I had found, the way my heart was both broken and mending at the same time. "I'm learning a lot about your father," I said finally. "And about myself." She was quiet for a moment. "I wish I could be there with you." "You are," I replied. "Every time you call, every time you remind me that I'm loved, you're here." Ruth continued to be my anchor. We spent afternoons in the garden, talking about everything and nothing. She encouraged me to keep painting, to keep writing, to keep reaching out to Samuel. "You're building something new, Dorothy," she said. "Don't be afraid to let it grow." One afternoon, Samuel called with news. "I told my mother about you," he said, his voice trembling. "She cried. She said she always hoped you were happy, that you and Dad had a good life. She wants to meet you." My heart pounded. "I'd like that," I said softly. A week later, I met Evelyn at a small cafe. She was older than in the photograph, her hair silver, her eyes kind but wary. We talked for hours, about James, about Samuel, about the choices we make and the consequences we live with. She told me about the pain of raising a child alone, about the anger and forgiveness that had shaped her life. "I never hated James," she said quietly. "I just wished he'd been braver." I nodded, understanding more than I could say. "We all wish for courage, Evelyn. Sometimes we find it too late." We parted with a hug, a promise to stay in touch, and a sense of peace that surprised me. I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of anger, it was about making room for something new. Back home, I found myself looking at the world differently. The house felt warmer, the garden brighter, the laughter of children in the street sweeter than before. I started volunteering at the local library, reading stories to children, helping with after-school programs. I found joy in small things: a cup of tea, a good book, a letter from Samuel. The support group continued to flourish. More women joined, each with her own story of loss and resilience. We celebrated every victory, no matter how small: a new job, a reconciled relationship, a day without tears. I found strength in their courage, and they found hope in mine. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Ruth, she turned to me and said, "You've changed, Dorothy. You're stronger, brighter." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in my heart. I just stopped hiding. I stopped pretending everything was perfect. I let myself be seen. She squeezed my hand. "That's the bravest thing you can do." That night, I wrote in my journal, "Today I learned that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about letting the truth in, letting it change you, letting it make you whole." Today, I remembered that love is not about secrets, it's about honesty, about courage, about the willingness to forgive, even when it's hard. As I closed the journal, I realized that the journey was far from over. There would be more questions, more pain, more hope, but I was ready, and for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to tomorrow. The months that followed were filled with new beginnings. Samuel and I spoke often, our conversations growing deeper, more honest. He sent me photos of his garden, updates about Lily's school projects, and sometimes just a simple "thinking of you." Each message was a thread, weaving us closer together, mending the fabric of a family that had been torn for decades. Susan visited more, too. She brought her children, who played with Lily in Samuel's backyard, their laughter echoing through the house. For the first time, my two families, one by birth, one by fate, sat around the same table, sharing stories, passing dishes, and building memories that belonged to all of us. Ruth remained my anchor. She cheered me on as I spoke at the support group, sharing my story with women who had lost their voices to secrets and shame. "You're a light, Dorothy," she said one evening as we walked through the garden. "You show us all that it's never too late to heal." I found myself volunteering more, at the library, at the community center, at the church. I read stories to children, helped organize food drives, and listened to the worries of women who reminded me of myself. Each act of kindness was a balm, soothing the old wounds, reminding me that I still had something to give. One afternoon, Samuel called with news. "Mom, I found some of Dad's old letters. They were tucked away in a box in the attic. Would you like to read them?" My heart leapt. I'd love to. He brought the box over the next weekend. We sat together at my kitchen table, sorting through the yellowed envelopes, reading James's words aloud. Some were love letters to Evelyn, full of longing and regret. Others were notes to Samuel, written but never sent, filled with advice, encouragement, and apologies. As we read, I saw James in a new light, not just as my husband, but as a man who had struggled, who had made mistakes, who had tried in his own way to do right by the people he loved. I forgave him, truly, for the first time. Samuel and I talked late into the night, sharing memories, asking questions, filling in the blanks of our lives. He told me about the pain of growing up without a father, about the anger he had carried, about the relief he felt now that the truth was out. "I always wondered why I felt so different," he said quietly. "Now I know. And now I can finally let it go." I hugged him, my heart full. "We can both let it go, Samuel. We can both move forward." The support group flourished. More women joined, each with her own story of loss and resilience. We celebrated every victory, no matter how small: a new job, a reconciled relationship, a day without tears. I found strength in their courage, and they found hope in mine. As the year drew to a close, I wrote in my journal, "Today I learned that healing is not a destination, but a journey. It's the small steps, the honest conversations, the willingness to forgive, not just others, but yourself. Today, I remembered that family is not just about blood, but about the people who choose to love you, who choose to stay. And as I closed the journal, I realized that the journey was almost complete. There would be more questions, more pain, more hope. But I was ready, and for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to tomorrow. Winter returned, blanketing the world in white and turning the garden into a quiet wonderland. The house was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon and the sound of laughter. Samuel and Lily visited often, and Susan's family joined us for Sunday dinners. The table was always full of food, of stories, of the kind of love that grows stronger after being tested. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Samuel handed me a small wrapped box. "For you, Mom," he said, his eyes shining. Inside was a new journal, the cover embossed with gold letters. Dorothy's story. I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. "Thank you, Samuel, for everything." He hugged me, his voice thick with emotion. "No, Mom, thank you. For giving me a family, for giving me the truth." That night, I sat by the fire, the journal in my lap, and wrote the first entry. Today, I learned that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie. Today, I remembered that love is not about perfection, but about forgiveness, about courage, about the willingness to open your heart, even when it hurts. Today, I realized that family is not just about blood, but about the people who choose to love you, who choose to stay. The support group continued to flourish. More women joined, each with her own story of loss and resilience. We celebrated every victory, no matter how small: a new job, a reconciled relationship, a day without tears. I found strength in their courage, and they found hope in mine. Ruth remained my anchor, her friendship a constant source of comfort. We spent long afternoons in the garden, planning for spring, dreaming of new beginnings. She reminded me that healing is not a destination, but a journey we take together, one step at a time. As the year drew to a close, I looked back on the path I had walked, the secrets uncovered, the pain endured, the love reclaimed. I realized that I was no longer defined by the things I had lost, but by the strength I had found. And now, I want to ask you, the one listening to my story, what would you do if you found a secret that changed everything? Would you hide from the truth, or would you face it head on? I want to hear your thoughts. Please share them in the comments. If my story moved you, please like this video. It helps more people find hope when they need it most. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories of survival, courage, and the power of choosing yourself. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You might just give them the strength to refuse to disappear. With all my heart, thank you for listening. Until next time.